Good morning. I'm Bev Crumple, and I'm representing the Continuing Education Committee this morning. And we welcome all of you in the community room, in the theater, and on Zoom. And if you're on Zoom, we would like you to mute for now. And if you have a question, you can unmute yourself, but we would appreciate the mutes right now. It is my pleasure to introduce Reilly this morning, our own resident. She hasn't been here very long, but has already served or is serving on the advisory council and represents the dining committee on that, as well as being chair of the art committee. Ray came to Iowa State in 1974 and spent 18 years on the faculty in the Department of Textiles and Clothing as extension specialist for Iowa. When she left that position, she wanted to maintain continuity and help with the university museums, so she volunteered, and then in 1997 became a docent and has given tours on campus of the art for students and others. She's really hoping that she can be back on campus again when COVID gets settled. So it is with deep pleasure, if you are, whether or not you have arms on your chairs or not, she is presenting an armchair tour of art on the Iowa State campus. Welcome, Ray.
Thanks, Bev. That's very kind of you. I get to take off my mask. I don't know how, this is wonderful. We're working now. Very fine. Well, nothing takes the place of seeing art in the flesh. But when it's the middle of January, it's kind of nice to be here, not having to worry about boots and coats. And the other thing is you don't have to worry about running hither and thither as I take you around to see things. So just enjoy your armchair and we will start. Some of you may not know what Art on Campus is, what that collection is. Well, it's a collection of over 2,500 artworks that are in buildings and outside of buildings all around campus. It doesn't include what's at the Brunier Museum or the farmhouse either. It's one of the largest Art on Campus programs in the country, and we are extremely proud of that. We've always had some art on campus, but it was formalized into a collection in 1980, just after the law was passed, the Art in State Buildings Law was passed, which mandated that any buildings that were constructed or renovated using state funds would need to use a certain percentage of their budget for art for that building. And the percentage was really tiny. It was 0.5%, but that's given us a lot of art. The law no longer is in effect, but we still follow it, though I believe the percentage that we use is a little bit smaller than that. Now, I'm not going to be talking about Grant Wood's mural or the bigger pieces that Christian Peterson did, and that's because University Museums has a lot of YouTube videos on those, and I think you will enjoy watching them if that interests you. What you do is you go to the website and then you scroll to the bottom and find the YouTube logo. And then the important thing is that you find the place where it says videos and you click on that, and then the list goes on and on and on. So you'll have many choices if you'd like to do that. Now, with that said, the first thing I'm going to show you is something that was done by Christian Peterson. And I think many of you will recognize who this person is. Oh, you know what we need to do? Can we take care of the lights a little bit? Now, when we do Art on Campus programs, we very often use visual literacy techniques in which we look at an artwork for quite a long time, and I ask questions and the people in the group answer them. So we're going to try that, and we're going to see if we can that work. And those of you who are watching on Zoom, if I ask a question that you want to answer, unmute yourself long enough to answer, and then mute yourself back again, and that will help. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. But here we have George Washington Carver, and he was the first African American to receive both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree at Iowa State University. He went on to Tuskegee for most of his career, and he spent his time researching ways that that products like peanuts, soybeans, sweet potatoes, and other common crops could be used in many, many ways, not just edible ways, but industrial ones as well. And one of his motivations for doing that was to help the poor farmers, especially in the South, to find ways to make money at their farming by creating greater demand for their crops. So here we have George Washington Carver, and I'd like to know what you can notice about him.
He's little.
He's little, and that's partly because the sculpture is quite small. It's about this tall, but he is small, yeah. And what else do you notice? The hands. What about the hands? They're prominent. Are they prominent just, what makes them prominent, do you think?
His hands.
Okay, his hands. Why are they prominent?
Because he's holding the peanut.
He's holding something, okay. And someone mentioned he's holding a peanut in them. Why else do his hands look prominent?
They're much bigger than they should be.
Okay, they're bigger. And artists sometimes do that to emphasize what they would like you to look at. And it's important what he's holding in his hands. So you've noticed he's holding a peanut in his hands. What can you notice about the way he's holding the peanut?
Protectively.
Protectively, yeah. And I think that's a very good way to describe that. Any other way you might describe that, the way he's holding that?
Carefully.
Carefully. It's kind of reverently even. And I'll show you one other kind of, well, I can show you partly a kind of nifty thing. If you were to be there, and if you could be looking over from this vantage point down to his hands, you would see the stem of the peanut, and you would see the roots of the peanut, and the roots are going into his veins. And you know that shows the bond that he had with the peanuts. You know, kind of special. And I'm going to show you one other picture, and that's a photograph that was taken by George Christensen in 2005. He was commissioned to take photographs of artworks, architectural details, and landscape all over campus, and to make a collection of that. And so this is one of the ones he chose. And one thing I like very much about this is the prominence of his face. In fact, we might go back to this one. When you look at him, what do you see in the face? What do you notice about his face?
Forehead.
What? Kindness, okay.
The lines in his forehead.
Okay, lines in his forehead. So what does that indicate?
He's worried about something.
He might be worried about something. It might indicate his age. This is not a student age George. It's an older George.
It's a pleasant looking face. He has a slight smile. He looks very pleasant.
He's a pleasant person. And is he looking at you, or is he looking at something else? He's looking up. And what might that indicate?
He's looking at the future.
Vision? Okay, so he's thinking about his vision, what he might be able to do, what he's been doing already, and what he might be doing in the future to further help the farmers of the South. You've been wonderful. This is terrific. Okay. I'll tell you just a little bit about Christian Peterson for those of you who don't know much about him. States when he was about 8 years old from Denmark, and he came to the East Coast and studied a trade. He learned to be a die cutter, which meant that he was creating the models for small medallions, perhaps commemorative spoons and that sort of thing. My connection is unstable. Okay, ignore the note. But he really wanted to be an artist, so he studied art as well. And he was doing both in the East Coast. But he decided at one point that he wanted to come to Chicago. He wanted to be in the Midwest, where he thought the center of regional culture would be. And so he came to Chicago to devote his time to art. However, he did that in 1929, and that was not a good plan. So he was certainly having a bad time financially, but he was invited by Grant Wood to come to Iowa to take part in the New Deal program for public works of art. And his job was to create a mural of clay that represented the dairy industry. The program is done, the mural was not. And so the president at that time of the university paid him from his own pocket to and then he stayed on for another 20 years at the university. He was a beloved instructor and he loved his students. So let's go on to the next one. And I think I will just go on to the next slide, which will show up a little better. This is one of the sculptures that he did around 1944. See here. Yes, what makes you think that? Okay, so his hand, one hand is hanging, dangling, the other hand clutching his chest. Posture, what about posture? He does, he looks like he's going to collapse. And the title for this piece is Price of Victory. And the war broke out and many students left to fight in the war. Christian Peterson knew very well that many of them would not, and he mourned that. And he created this sculpture, and it was first put on display after the war was over in Gold Star Hall in the Memorial Union. And for those of you who have not been there, it's an odd place in a way, because students stream, and we all stream in and out all the time, but it's a beautiful setting with stained glass windows and a list of men and women who lost their lives in the various wars. And this statue was set up, and it caused such a strong reaction from people who saw it. It was agonizing for them to see it because many had lost someone in the war, and it seemed to be kind of soon after the war to be showing this kind of sculpture. So it was removed, and Christian Peterson, when he heard this, said, "It is the greatest compliment ever paid to my work." And the idea that it would create such a strong emotion was important to him, and he felt he had succeeded with the work.
Where is it now?
It goes around to various places. Sometimes it's been in another room in the Union, has windows that looks out onto the central campus on the west side, sort of. But it sometimes is taken out for exhibition in other places. It was recently in Memorial Hall in an exhibition. On the subject was "Who Am I?" But it goes to various places. Okay, next, we're going to go to Beardshire, and we're taking the elevator up to the top floor. and we're going to have a look at the skylight called Glass Gardens. Now, once upon a time, there was a skylight, there were two skylights like this at the top of Beardshire. They were beautiful, but over the years, they were leaky, needed repairing, and at some point, it was decided just to take them out. Well, some of the panels were sold to anyone who was interested, which was a good thing. And the skylights were replaced with, I don't know, what would you describe those? It was kind of a orangey, gold, something or other. It was ugly. And finally, in in the late 90s, Beardshire Hall underwent quite a renovation project. The bottom floor was redesigned to be of service to students. The rest of the place was spiffed up in various ways. New treads put on the staircases so that the treads were kind of like this from where, and then now they were going to be straight again. And the decision was to replace the stained glass skylights. And Marty Grunn, who has a business in Des Moines with stained glass windows, was the person who was tapped to do this job. He had black and white photos, but he didn't have color photos, and he didn't have any way of knowing what the textures of the glass were. And he really wanted to do historically accurate reproduction. So he went and visited Fay and Jim Whitaker. Some of you may remember them. They had the panels and installed them in their retirement home. So he went to wherever that was. I think it was Minnesota or Michigan or Wisconsin. And he looked at the colors. He wanted to match the colors. He wanted to match the textures of the glass. And so he had a chance to do that. And this is the result. There are two of these skylights. In fact, this is only part of the one skylight. It goes up further, and it ends up with this series of three at the other end of the skylight. Can you hazard a guess as to how many pieces of glass might be in this stained glass?
Thousands.
Thousands? How many?
I don't know.
7,200. It's a lot of pieces of glass. Now, I should have shown you this detail so you can see the colors. Notice this medallion here. The dome, the green dome of Beardshire Hall, also had an oculus in the middle of it. It had never had a design in the glass, though, and Marty thought it needed to have that. So he took that central design and put it right in here. And this picture is taken from some levels down, so it looks quite small, but it's very large. There are 3,500 pieces of glass in just this piece here. Other things you might notice about this, if you look around the inside of the dome and further, the archways and other details, those were all repainted and regilded. And if you have a chance to take the elevator up to the top floor, you should really do it sometime. It's rather extraordinary. Many people remember taking classes in Beardshire Hall, though it's now all administrative. Wendy Winterstein has her office there, and for many years, Warren Madden also had his office there.
What protects these from the weather?
I don't know.
From hail?
I don't know whether there's a layer on the outside of that or not, but there's certainly something to protect it. Okay, we're going to move on to black engineering. And what we're seeing here is a sculpture called Karam, and it's by Bruce White. It's quite massive, and I'll show you another view from another angle and come back to here. Does anyone know what goes on in black engineering? That building? There wouldn't be any reason why you would, but I just wondered. Mechanical engineering and industrial engineering have their classes in there. And what we have here, Bruce, the artist, wanted to do something that showed what you can do with metal, the bending, the stretching, the cutting, the deforming of it. And so he worked with a high strength aluminum. But the initial idea for the design was a very simple one. And I would like those of you who have your card that that's on your chair, you can pick up your card. And if those of you at home, if you have a small piece of paper, like a file card, I'd like you to look at this picture and then make 2 cuts in your card that, oops, I shouldn't be showing that, should I? And 2 cuts that would have been needed to make this artwork. You can just cut it with, just tear it. Just make 2 cuts in the piece of paper. Then start playing with it and see if you can figure out if that's the way the cuts ought to be. And don't cut them off. I mean, it has to be, maintain the 1 piece of paper. Don't cut it all the way through, but it does have to have 2 cuts in it in order to form the design. Okay, we've got 1, that's good. I do this with students on tours, and it's interesting to see. There's always a couple of people who get it, and a bunch who don't. Okay, David's working diligently away. Okay, do you want to see what it looks like, or you want to work on it a little bit longer?
Ray,
Yeah,
do you know how the artist actually developed the plan?
he could have done it the way we're doing it right now. He could have been taking a piece of paper and playing with it.
Have you ever seen his presentation?
No,
Okay.
have you?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't, but I've had conversation about it.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a fabulous piece.
It is, yeah, it's really quite neat. Okay, let me show you, first, all of you who are here, why don't you hold up your artworks here? Oh, we've got a little plant over there. Ah, yay, Hannah. Let's see. I think maybe you have it too. Okay, let me show you. Whoops. There it goes. So that's where the cuts are. And, and Hannah has it. Anybody else? Good, yes, it looked like you had it too. Now you can take that card and twist that one arm and pull the other one out, and you can make quite a good representation of the sculpture. So here I'm messing with it, and I twisted it, and I made a little fold here, and then there's my version of the sculpture. And I think, Hannah, if you just twirl that end in your right hand around one more time, you'll have a twist. And you too can be a sculptor. But it does show you how an idea can start in a very simple way. Okay, next, since we are in the area of engineering, we're going to take a little walk further, and we'll see these 3 pieces of Vermont marble. And these were designed by Mac Adams. The tall pieces are about 8 feet tall. And well, you know, that's interesting. But, so we continue walking along and the view changes. And you have a completely different idea of what the shapes of those pieces are. And then you walk a little further along and, oh, it changes some more. And I'm going to show the next one because the contrast is a lot better. And there it is. So what do we see there?
A moth.
Okay, a moth. And I think you know the answer. Okay, why is it a moth? Is this the entomology building? Nope. What building is it? It's electrical and computer engineering. So a moth, what does a moth have to do with anything? Okay, a moth could get into a computer.
It's called a bug.
It's called a bug. And then what does one have to do if the moth gets inside of a computer? You have to debug, yeah. And that is the story that we hear that happened in Harvard around 1947, I believe, when a moth got into the room where the big computer was and messed up the electronic system. And they had to figure out what was causing this problem. And as they poked around, they found a dead moth, and thus the term debugged. Now, I don't know, Herb, do you know another story about the genesis of debugging?
If I did, I wouldn't tell you.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So this is called the moth. And the other message that the artist had with this is we may need to adjust ourselves, literally in some cases, to be able to see things differently. And then another way to look at this, whether it's a moth or a butterfly, there's the genesis of it, the becoming. And many of the artworks, the more recent ones, particularly on campus, have that kind of idea that you come as a student and you become an adult, you're growing, you're developing, and that's what we have here as well. I'm just going to show this briefly. This is called Bravo 3, and it's done by Bill Barrett, and it's outside the business college. And what kind of reaction do you get to this? It's outside of the business college. Mm-hmm. And it's about 9 feet tall. Does it make you smile? Not necessarily. Okay, makes me smile. What kind of reaction do you have to that? The forms? Collaboration?
It looks like a puzzle piece of some sort.
And we all do a lot of puzzles, don't we? So puzzle pieces, okay. Collaboration. Anything else? You get any
Confusion.
confusion? Okay. It makes me want to dance with them. Reminds me of Asian calligraphy. And I'm glad to hear a variety of responses to it because that's, we want to see that in art. Okay. Next. This is my favorite artwork in the Art on Campus. Oh, yes, David.
My favorite.
Your favorite too, okay. Yeah, I love this piece. It's called Janus Agra Altar, and it's done by Beverly Pepper. And we are so fortunate that she did this for us in 1986, because had we waited another 10 years, we wouldn't have been able to afford her she gained reputation and a following, which was really quite wonderful. She died just this past year, and she was creating artworks into her 90s, and her artworks are big. This one is 14 feet tall. Well, anyway, do you know what building this is connected to? Agronomy, yes. Were you on the committee? Were you on the committee that dealt with them? Okay. Agronomy had a very large addition made in the early 1980s. And it was at that time that the law was passed about the Art and State Buildings program. And so this is really the first use of that law to create artwork for a particular building, in this case, agronomy. When an artist takes up a commission like this, that person very often wants to know what happens in that building. What is agronomy? Something about the history of agronomy. What's the importance of agronomy? What's the importance of agronomy at Iowa State? And what's that importance of agronomy at Iowa State in the larger world? And so an artist will do that kind of questioning and do background work too, to get some answers to some of those questions. And what she did then was to propose this piece that is called Janus Agra Altar. And I love the fact that there are 3 parts to the piece. But what do you notice about this piece as you see it before you? What strikes you? The horizontal layers, okay, that's part of the patina, and I think aided by weathering. So that adds to the interest of the surface. Okay, other things?
Looks like a spade.
Wow, Robert, Angelisa, you said that. Yay!
Did he say? What did he say?
You said it looks like a spade. I thought I was going to have to go through quite a long line of questioning to get to that point. Yeah, if you put a very large telephone pole right here, sticking out about 30 feet maybe, it could look like a spade, a double-sided spade. And that's what she had in mind. It's called an adze. It's a very ancient tool that people used for working the soil. You could still get one now. I think it would take a bit of doing to find one, but it can still be used today. But it's using that humble tool, enlarging it to create this visual image for us. So that's terrific. What else do you notice about this shape? More in art terms, maybe. I was asking a group of 1st and 2nd graders about this one day, and I said, what word would you describe, or what would you use to describe this piece? And the first guy said, symmetrical. Oh my goodness. The next kid said, abstract. And what I was expecting to hear from them was big. I underestimated.
It's very dynamic. It's very forceful.
Very forceful, yeah.
Very powerful.
It certainly is. It's a powerful piece, powerful shape. And I'll show you another view of it. I was hoping that I could get more of a profile because it's not flat. It, especially here, there's a piece that stands out. It's thicker here and then gradually diminishes at the top and the bottom. So it's not entirely flat. It's bronze, patinated bronze. So it has a patina, which is what you're seeing partly with the lines on the metal. Okay, now, so we have 3 parts to this name, and we have kind of looked at the agra part. We have recognized that this is a tool, it's an ancient tool, it still could be used today, but it's a very simple tool. How about Janus? So how does Janus fit into this thing? And who is Janus?
Well, Janus is a Greek god, is he not?
Roman, I think.
Okay.
Roman god?
Looks forward and back.
Looks forward and back. And so we could look back at the history of agriculture, the importance of that in civilization. We can look forward to what comes next. We're at a point of being present, and we can look forward to what's next, what could we be doing next, what does the future hold for agriculture. Now, when you see pictures of Janus, very often you see the two faces, one facing that way, and one facing that way, which is what I had originally thought, this could be the mouth. No, Beverly Pepper indicated that it was, the top part was up and then facing down was the other part. So it's just reversing what you would normally think of. The up part is looking out to the future. The bottom part is looking inward, looking at what has happened in the past. So an interesting way of interpreting Janus. And the last part of the name is altar. Now this is a big circle that this spade, the adze, is in. It's in the middle of that. What would make it an altar, and what would it be an altar to? An altar to learning, okay. Anything else? An altar to honor the soil. I think these are good ideas. But it's an
Maybe-
altar for, excuse me,
Maybe to life itself.
life itself.
Maybe to life itself.
It could be, because agriculture has been,
Right.
key to our survival, our lives. Okay. So it is a symbol for us to pay homage to agriculture, to the past civilization, what's been done in agriculture from beginning days to now, the importance of that for our whole world. So it's I think it all pulls together. And I was thinking last night, just before I turned off my light, it's such a simple form. It's such a simple tool, but it's really very elegant. And that elegance can carry the weight of what we're putting onto it, the meaning of it, importance of agriculture to civilization, the importance of what we do at Iowa State in agriculture for civilization, and how we can pay homage to agriculture. They could, except it's not very wide and it's not very high. Oh, sorry. Could you sit on that circle? Probably not very easily. It would not be comfortable. That's an interesting idea. It would not function that way, but you could certainly stand around it. I should point out one other thing about this space. Once upon a time, this was a horse track, and I believe not for racing, but for showing horses. And so it was a very big oval space, and it was surrounded by these beautiful old trees that formed an arbor, and it was just a beautiful cathedral setting. When Beverly Pepper came to visit Iowa State for the first time, she was not expecting to take the commission, but she was just sort of coming because they asked her to. But Lynette brought her out to the space late in the afternoon and showed it to her, the site her piece would be standing in, whatever that piece was going to be. And she looked at it for a little while. She got out her sketchbook and started sketching. And Lynette knew she had her. Unfortunately, a few years ago, a straight line storm went through this area. And it took out most of the trees. And some of the trees have been replanted, but it's going to take a while before we have this wonderful feeling again. The wonderful thing about it is the sculpture was not at all damaged in the process of this very severe storm. Okay, let's see where we will go next. Okay, I think many of you have seen this before if you've walked around on campus. It's called Border Crossing, and it's by Luis Jimenez. He created it in 1989. We did not receive it until 1999. And it was purchased by the Human Sciences College. It was brought here as part of the Brunier's celebration of resiliency, the resiliency of a person, or resiliency of a family or of a community. And once it was here, the College of Human Sciences really wanted to keep it. And so it raised the money to buy it. And then it served as a centerpiece for a program the next year that was university-wide about Iowa State University Year of the Family. But let's go back to what this is. What do you see here?
Carrying someone on their shoulders.
Okay, so you see two people, a man and a woman, and the woman is on the shoulders of the man. Okay, what else?
It's a family.
It's a family. Okay, what makes it a family?
The woman is carrying an infant.
Okay, we'll skip over to this picture.
Yeah.
She's
A
carrying
squalling infant.
a squalling infant, indeed. So it's a family. Let's go back to this. Anything else you noticed about particularly the man?
He's very strong.
Okay, he's barefoot. He must be in the water. I think that would be a very good observation. And the water may be coming up. We don't know how high. This is the Rio Grande. It may have had a very mucky bottom. And so and that probably answers the question of why the woman is on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
The pants do look kind of wet. So he could be walking through the water. Okay.
Keeping it dry.
Yes, they're immigrants. Now, Luis Jimenez is American-born of Mexican parents, and he was very accustomed to seeing people crossing the border illegally. And he made this in homage of those who have risked everything to cross the border in search of a better life. And I'll go back one little bit. Notice the muscles on this man's arms, how tightly he's hanging on to her knees. Because if I were on top of him, I would be hanging on to him for dear life, but she isn't. She's hanging on to her baby. And so the man really has to work hard to maintain balance of her on his shoulders. You can see his head bowed by the weight of all of this and the struggle to walk through the waters. Now, let's have a look at this little baby. And she's holding the baby's head. This baby is Luis' father, who was brought over illegally. This is his grandmother. And the man may be his grandfather. I've heard two versions of this. It could be his father, or his grandfather, or it could be a person who's been employed to be a smuggler to take her across the border. I'm not sure which it is. Either way, it doesn't matter too much. So here they are, another view of it. And those of you who have seen this, what direction are they walking? They're north, yep.
They're north.
And those of you who know what is north of here, what's north of where they are? McKay Hall. McKay Hall is the main building for human sciences, at that time, family and consumer sciences. The college is in the business of doing research and teaching that is going to be helpful to families. So it makes good sense in the siting of this particular piece that they are seen walking north to the college when they're in search of a better life. Okay. We're going to going past this one, sorry. And we're going here. Okay. On a lighter note, this is by William King. And I will tell you, he's a tall and skinny guy, just like this. And a lot of his sculptures did look like him. So what's happening here? Okay, so he could be welcoming people, he could be restricting, saying, stand back. What else might he be doing? Let me show you his face. Oops, face. Sorry about the snow, but it does emphasize the mouth. Okay, any other ideas about him now that you see? What? Oh, it looks sort of like Psy.
This looks like
with the crest, yeah. Haven't heard that one before. That's good. Anything else? He's shouting. Okay, is he shouting? Happy shouting or angry shouting or?
unhappy.
You think?
Horrified.
Joan, what did you say?
I think he looks he's horrified at something.
He
His
looks
fingers were extended in horror.
Okay, so he looks horrified at something. And
I think he looks excited that he sees somebody he hasn't seen for a long time, and he's stretching out his arms because he's going to hug that person.
And that's a really good interpretation too, that he's excited and ready to welcome somebody. And don't we all look forward to that time when we can hug each other? Well, does it help any if I tell you the title of this? It's called Solo. Solo. So he could be singing, you know, ta-da. A lot of things that Bill created had to do with his own growing up. And he had lots of anxieties and problems in school, problems with social interactions and so forth. And in this one, he's showing he overcame it and he did it. Yay for Bill. Okay, some of you know this one. Oh, this is Left-sided angel. And
It's
this
probably
is, by
generated, this has generated more comments than almost anything else on campus over the years. I don't know about now.
Yeah, certainly over the years, or in the beginning stages, it received a lot of comment. In fact, when it was being installed, the artist was here, Lynette Pullman, the director of the museums, was with him, and they were getting it situated, and students would wander by and say just the most awful things about it. And Lynette was so embarrassed. And she was apologizing to Stephen that this was happening and that he was hearing all this. And he said, it's wonderful. They're looking at the art, they're reacting to it. What could be better? These days, it does not get that kind of reaction anymore. People are just accustomed to it. They see what it is. So what do you see here? Excuse me? I do, and I'll show it in a minute, but just now, what do you see or what do you not see? Okay, he's missing an arm, and he's missing a leg. It looks like a wing, but there's only one of them. And if you were wanting to fly, it would be nice to have two. And what can you notice about the parts that are there? Some emaciated, yeah, kind of deformed a bit. Yeah.
They're disjointed.
Disjointed.
They look damaged.
Damaged, yeah.
I think of Coventry Cathedral and the bombings and how things would not be whole when they were done.
So damage that comes from catastrophic things, yeah. Do you think that the angel is going up or coming down?
The foot is on the ground, so they're coming down.
Maybe coming down, yeah, or it could be preparing to go up.
Up, yeah.
I'll show you another version and see if, whoops, got to click in the right place. Here we go, another version. I love this view of it. And does it remind you of any action in a sport?
Oh,
Ooh, what?
I don't know. Eating? Never been asked that question.
Well,
Basketball.
Good for you, Ray.
well, what if this angel were out at the end of a diving board, being prepared to take off? You know, they go up on their toes, they bend their knees, spring up, and then they do blah, blah, blah.
That's why I was going to say ice skating.
Well, yeah, the same thing, preparing to make some terrific jump. Or I also think of men's gymnastics when they're coming down from the rings or other apparatus and they do some really swirly thing and then stick the landing. So I can see this person going up or coming down. Now, thinking about the balance, if any of you are taking classes with Brett, she's probably working on balance, and you stand on one foot maybe with a chair nearby, but you finally get your balance sort of, but then go up on your toes and it's a whole different thing. You get very wobbly, not good. So one message you might have is that our left-sided angel is finding balance. It's battered, it's broken, not all there, but he's found balance and he's persevering. And that's a message that's somewhat common in some of the newer artworks around campus because it relates so well to the student situation. Okay, moving right along, we're going to come to the last thing. Come on, cursor, where are you? This is very weird. I've lost my cursor. No? Okay, Faces of Iowa State. There was a project that was started in around 2016 to recognize people involved with Iowa State, whether it was a student or a faculty, administrator, a friend of the university, an alum, and to have portraits done by Rose Franson, who is an Iowa artist and has done portraits of lots and lots of people. And she often does them in a very quick way. So that particular year, she went to the state fair, and for 4 hours in the morning, she would do a portrait of somebody. And in the afternoon, she would do another portrait, another 4 hours. And at the end of that, there were about 20 portraits. Well, that has continued, and I think now there's probably there's probably around 40 of them and more to come. And I was really tickled to find that among the portraits are 4 people with connections to Green Hills. So this is very strange. Okay. Huh. Well, what I want to do, I want to get to the next one. Okay, here we go. So who is this? Who? Yes, Wayne Fuller. Now, what makes this so recognizable as being Wayne?
His glasses.
His glasses, okay. His expression too.
Yes.
What about his expression? Gentle. It's okay. How many of you know Wayne? Okay. Yeah. His hair is very characteristic. Okay. How about his eyes? There's something about the eyes, and more than that, it's underneath the eyes. She captures something in the muscles around the eye that it's hard to explain, I think, but if you think of what makes your eyes crinkle up and what changes the expression of the eyes, it's the little muscles around it, and somehow she captures that, I think. So the combination, the glasses, the hair, the smile, the eyes, that's Wayne. Okay, let's try. Oh, Carol, there she is. It's Carol Grant. And selected by the University Museums because of her over 40 years of volunteer work with the museums and she's been very, can't think of the right word. She's been very much involved in the expansion and development of the museum in various roles, volunteer roles. And so here she is. And then the next one, George Burnett. Yeah. What makes him instantly recognizable? His mouth. Yeah, that really says it. The cheeks, and again, the eyes. When he showed up to have his portrait done, Rose said to him something like, and George, if you're watching, you'll have to tell me if I'm right in quoting this. Now, there's a face ready to be painted. And then the last person is Grace Amamiya. And I had forgotten that she did live here for a short time at the end of her life. Now, it's interesting. She was supported by or sponsored for this project by the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And she didn't work there. Her husband, Min, was in agronomy, but she was picked for other reasons. She was certainly a friend of the university, but she had such an interesting and somewhat difficult life story. She was interned as a Japanese American during World War II. When that was over, she spent the next 70 years telling people about that experience. And what's remarkable about it, I think, says a lot about her name, Grace. She was not bitter. She explained what had happened. She wanted it never to happen again. She was eager to have peace and social justice, and that was always her message, kindness and peace. And yeah, that's Grace. She was in her 90s for this portrait. Well, now, just to remind you, if you're interested in looking at some of the videos by university museums, check out the website, go down to YouTube and click on videos and find all of the various delights that are available. And I need to thank the university museums and especially Cindy Marshall, who is the assistant curator, for helping, well, for gathering all the photographs that I used. And many, many thanks to John and Stacy and Maggie. John, who showed me how to put together a basic PowerPoint and then to make sure the system was all working properly, which was no easy job. So I thank all three of them for that. Now I have some maps. And if any of you are interested in going on campus at some time when the weather is nice, you can pick up, just tear off one of these maps. If any of you at home are watching and you want a copy of the map, just email me or give me a call and I will see that you get one. It's a good map. It doesn't include all 2,500 art on campus artworks, but it does include many of them. So thank you so much. This has been fun for me to think about, and I hope you get on campus sometime soon to see the flesh. Thanks.